everybody. Greg Rust, Simon Chapman and Greg Murphy with you for another edition of the KTM Summer Grill here at speedcafe.com. Unprecedented is a word that we used a lot in 2020, and not just because of COVID-19. There were all sorts of other stories. Some of them were perplexing, some of them had very positive outcomes in some ways. We're going to tackle a couple of those for you now in this discussion. Why don't we begin with Daniel Abt and and the E-Series cheating saga. Didn't he say at the time or shortly thereafter that it was just a bit of fun that he installed a proper sim racer
in his seat
to
fill in for him? Bit of a strange one, wasn't it? Yeah, I mean, obviously esports and, you know, obviously the Supercars E-Series was very popular, and it became, I think, a space that motorsport was able to survive through that real lockdown tough period for a lot, wasn't it? Drivers were able to get on, and everyone was into the E-Series sides of things, and every championship just about was doing something along the line. But that one stood out, didn't it? I mean, there was another one as well, but that one stood out, the fact that they did not appreciate that one single bit there at Audi, did they?
No.
And he was dropped pretty much straight away from that drive for doing it, which, yeah, I think took everyone a little bit by surprise.
The E-Series competition meant that fans were given immediacy to the drivers. Now, Kyle Larson made a blue. It cost him his drive. Understandably, what he said was bad. But, you know, he's kind of paid his dues and he will get to race again in a good seat too.
It was the context of it though, isn't it? You know, it was, yeah, listen, it wasn't good timing.
No.
At all, using the word and saying it. I think a lot of us sort of, you know, I felt a little bit sorry for him. I mean, yes, it was a very big mistake saying that and just, but the context was obviously around slang and a throwaway kind of thing. But, you know, everyone was pretty sensitive and still is very sensitive. The world is moving and changing, which is a positive thing. So he has paid his dues. And I think it's really great that he has been picked up by Hendricks, you know, for next year and given that chance. And there was some really good stuff written about, you know, how that relationship with Rick Hendrick and everything evolved and the things that Rick did and helped him with and bits and pieces. So, you know, it's been a positive outcome in that respect for something that was obviously pretty negative.
Simon, it was good to see, I think, the Formula One champion Lewis Hamilton using his stature in the community, not just the sport, more broadly for greater good. He shone a light on the whole Black Lives Matter thing. He got colleagues within the pit lane to get involved in as well. I mean, it had real traction, didn't it?
You only have to look at the car that he was driving to understand how big of an influence he's had. You know, the Silver Arrows, and Mercedes went out of their way to paint their cars black as a symbolic gesture, you know, to basically get behind the movement that Lewis is really championing at the moment. And, you know, love him or hate him for everything that he says off the track, he is undoubtedly one of the most high-profile people in the world who is really championing, you know, the Black Lives Matter cause at the moment. You can't deny that. So Lewis, you know, he's a 7-time champion now, but I think for a lot of people he'll probably be remembered for a lot of the stuff that he's doing off track at the moment. It's obviously been divisive for some people, but he is really, you know, trying to make a difference while he's at the top of his game. You know, at the end of the day, he's
influential.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, his career does have an endpoint as a driver. So right now, while he's at the peak of his powers, he's really using it for more than just being a Formula One race winner. He's trying to make, you know, some good out of the position that he's in.
Bubba Wallace was another driver we spoke about a lot in 2020, and the season ends with some good news NASCAR-wise for him, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure. The tie-up between Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan for Bubba Wallace to remain full-time in NASCAR in 2021. You know, there were a few suggestions that he might not be on the grid next year with Richard Petty Motorsport. So I guess, you know, some of the stuff that's happened, you know, away from the track, I don't know whether that's influenced, you know, how this tie-up has come, but, you know, Michael Jordan, who's
the GOAT.
He's the GOAT. He's, you know, he's a Lewis Hamilton type in many ways as far as, you know, his achievements. Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's cool to have, you know, a bit of a crossover too. You know, we're probably going to see, you know, more NBA fans getting into NASCAR and vice versa. So, Yeah, it's an interesting period for Bubba and for Denny. Denny getting into team ownership as well. You know, there aren't many drivers. I don't think there's any drivers actually currently competing who actually have ownership stakes in the championship as it stands.
Now to George Russell subbing for Lewis Hamilton, who got COVID in the latter part of the Formula One season. George, I thought was remarkable. I would love to have seen him have had another race in that car.
Yeah, I was really hoping that Lewis wouldn't finish the season. Not in respect that, you know, we don't want him racing, but I got selfish in respect of wanting to see George Russell actually have a race. Now, you know, we spoke to Mark Webber off air when we were talking to him in one of the other episodes, and, you know, he was right when he said the track that George drove on was pretty much essentially 5 corners at Bahrain, a very simple track, under 1 minute long. So not exactly the most challenging racetrack, but I think if he had managed to go and race at Abu Dhabi, I still reckon he would have been at the front there, competing right near the front and challenging. And it just goes to show, you know, he's driving for Williams and struggles to get outside Q1 to get into Q2 and just about every event this year. I think he's managed to get through maybe on 1 or 2. Jumps in the best car in the field, and he's qualifies on the front row, and he's leading a race. And, you know, again, it just highlights for me, the big thing is like about drivers and which cars they're in, which teams they're in, and, you know, you don't actually necessarily find out how good some of these drivers are because they never get to drive the best machinery. He is a Mercedes contracted driver. You know, he has tested for Mercedes before, so they knew obviously how good he was. But it was just great to see. It was a great story for Formula One, wasn't it? A brilliant story for Formula One. So I think we were robbed ever so slightly that we didn't get to see him run at Abu Dhabi.
Does it show that George Russell is good or that Valtteri Bottas is bad?
He's not bad. I mean, I know you're being extreme in that. I think it was definitely a situation that has probably put so much more pressure on Valtteri Bottas and highlighted the fact that, yes, he is a number 2, and I think it may also have shortened his F1 career beyond next season. There's no doubt that, you know, George Russell's going to end up at some stage before too long in a top team in Formula One because he's proven that he deserves to be there as far as his talent and his ability. So, yeah, I mean, there was lots of comments after that race from Valtteri Bottas. You could tell straight away, you know, how significant he thought that was in his future. And, you know, that's what happens in the sport, though. It really does. I mean, when you get an opportunity, George Russell got an opportunity, and did he make the most of it?
Most definitely.
I think one of the interesting things to probably come out of 2020 was where we were racing, you know, and the lack of people at the events as well. You know, Bathurst for one,
Indy 500.
Indy 500. Nobody able to go and watch the biggest race of the year. A place which is usually packed to the brim with about 300,000 people was empty, and it was just, you know, unfathomable. You know, in this day and age, I think one of the highlights for a lot of people, ironically, out of all of this, you know, coronavirus craziness was the Formula One calendar. You know, whilst we had a lot of uncertainty, we ended up going to some pretty neat places. You know, we went to Imola, we went to Mugello, we went to Portimao. You know, we did a
back to Turkey,
a separate configuration. Just chaos. But I think a lot of people really enjoyed that. You know, obviously we missed out on the Australian Grand Prix, and that was awful. But, you know, from that we got quite possibly one of the best F1 calendars in the modern age.
Sure. I mean, we'll look at Moto GP, you know, back-to-back races at the same circuit, which delivered pretty much nearly every time there was a back-to-back, a completely different result. It was, you couldn't take your eyes off it, right? And it was Moto 3, Moto 2, Moto GP. Every single one of those classes delivered just the most chaotic, brilliant championship. So, you know, and I think I said when we were talking about MotoGP in the earlier episodes, you know, the fact that they haven't gone and done that or followed through in the 2021 calendar with some of that kind of learning is almost a little bit disappointing for me because I think it worked really, really well.
I think another thing to talk about as well is we actually saw some pretty wild crashes in 2020, stuff that we're not used to. You know, we saw Romain Grosjean crash most recently at Bahrain and his car go up in flames. You know, that's just something we haven't seen recently. We saw at Austria
the Red Bull Ring,
at the Red Bull Ring. You know, probably one of the most terrifying crashes in recent MotoGP history. You know, there was basically everything seemed to be amplified in 2020.
Yeah,
It was just pure chaos.
Certainly was. Unforgettable is the word, and not just because of COVID-19. Our thanks to Simon and Greg there, and that is another edition wrapped of the KTM Summer Grill here at speedcafe.com, and we'll have another one for you tomorrow. KTM are giving away some awesome summer essentials each week. Stay cool with a KTM Powerwear pack featuring a shirt, cap, thongs or jandals, sunglasses and lanyard. To enter the draw, all you need to do is subscribe to Speed Cafe in the sign up box below this video. It is that easy. And we'll have another episode of the KTM Summer Grill for you tomorrow. Stay tuned.